Welcome to Journey with Jimmy, a Better Call Saul podcast.
Welcome to Better Kill Bill.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Willer, aka Bill, aka Biller.
I'm your host, Bradley, aka Willer, aka Bill.
Ooh, don't do that.
I'm Joe. I'm just here.
I'm just me.
Cool. Well, let's talk about Better Call Saul, which is irrelevant to everything that we referenced. It's not Kill Bill. On this week, we are discussing season 2, episode 5 through 7.
We need to stop talking about books like nerds and start talking about this
getting
instead.
To me. So that the whole middle section of season 2, which starts with episode 2-5, Rebecca. We've been doing our thing where we kind of break down chunks of our discussion based on which characters they pertain to. This is actually an episode that we have kind of like 4 or 5 chunks to break down into.
Yeah.
There's a lot of divergent stories here.
There's a lot going on here. I will say that this is the one that I remember the least out of the 3 you watched because it was so long ago.
To be fair, that was like 3 weeks ago for you.
Yeah, I usually watch them right after we record.
Yeah.
So
2-5 Rebecca. Did y'all catch why it's called Rebecca? I've seen people miss it.
Hit me with some knowledge.
This is the name of his wife?
Yeah, Rebecca is the name of Chuck's wife, which ex-wife. We're introduced to her this chapter.
And she gets the episode named after her.
Indeed. We'll actually start with Jimmy's side of the story because it's actually one of the shorter chunks of this episode. Yeah. The episode starts with Chuck bringing Jimmy to beat Rebecca. To the surprise of Chuck, Rebecca warms up to Jimmy pretty quickly. Chuck tries to do his little ear wiggle signal to end their dinner, but Rebecca keeps going as Jimmy's just so charming. At the end of the night, Chuck tries to make a joke about lawyers that I personally enjoyed, but Rebecca didn't get it, so Chuck is just left to be jealous.
And like that is... Oh man, they did so good at making that moment feel so fucking uncomfortable. Basically, Jimmy is a Chad, and Chuck is an incel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to break it down like that, you want to
break it down like that, which I do. But on the real though, you know, Jimmy was just he's being very respectable coming into their home. I don't think he was really that out of line anywhere. I mean, he may have gone overboard with the jokes.
No, but... I think Jimmy, if we put this in this timeline, this is right after Chuck is bringing him from Cicero after he saves him from the prison from his sexual offense Chicago sunroof, right? So for someone who had been hardcore conning up until this point, you still see that Jimmy is very much a likable man who can just sit down at a dinner and talk and listen and entertain. A skill that Chuck just straight up does not have.
Yeah. Yeah. He is jealous.
Yeah.
This is better fuck Chuck. Not in the verb way, just like, wow, F that guy.
I fuck Chuck.
Do you think Jimmy slept with Rebecca Bradley or no?
Not literally, but metaphorically at that dinner table, yes.
Wow. Deep.
Okay.
So Jimmy hadn't met Rebecca in the past. What does that say about Jimmy's relationship with Chuck?
It was quite estranged up until this point.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I got the vibe whenever Chuck had like visited him in the jail that this was like the first time they had talked in a long time.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like Jimmy's like, I gotta call somebody, you know.
Better call Jimmy.
Better call
Chuck.
Yeah.
A couple of other things I noted in this scene is Chuck bringing up that Howard has to jump through hoops to get people motivated. It comes up kind of like offhandedly in the scene, but it's important to hit these notes because Chuck is such an asshole that it's easy to think that he's an asshole to everybody. But he does hold the Howard to a esteem, to a high regard. They also say Yo-Yo Ma came to our wedding, which is just funny because Yo-Yo Ma is my least favorite stand in JoJo's, and just the fact that it gets referenced here is just also like they had a popular band go to their wedding, so like good job, Chuck. That's a good wedding. Overall, just a lot of good nuance in this scene. But back to reality. Aaron is babysitting Jimmy, and there's really no better way to phrase this because Jimmy is on hot water with Davis and Maine after his commercial stunt, so they sick Aaron on him. And the episode has a couple scenes of Jimmy having to deal with her help and how overbearing she is and ditching her to go get with Kim. And at the end, like, Erin is mad at Jimmy for ditching her, but she's also like okay with it. Like, she's like, let's just move on, let's be professional. So I kind of appreciated her for that. She didn't seem to hold that grudge.
Yeah, could have been worse.
Could have been worse. But the second central storyline here actually revolves around Kim, where Kim is getting the fallout for Jimmy's actions as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So Kim's at doc review with a bunch of newbies. They're playing rap music from their stereos while Kim is just being all professional. Jimmy comes in and suggests that they sue HHM because this is not cool what they're doing to her. They're just doing this to her to get to Jimmy. At least that's his theory, that this is all Chuck's fault. He refuses to believe Chuck isn't behind this. Kim shoos him away with a good line where she says, "I saved me." I think this is a very important and character defining line for Kim because that's the kind of person she is. She's very self-sufficient.
She's a go-getter.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of go-getter, multiple scenes in this episode is Kim just working her ass off to no avail. She's skipping lunch. She's making calls. She's trying to make something happen for HHM to get back on the good graces. And eventually she lands the deal with Mesa Verde. There's a really good montage scene of her calling like every contact she knows, and that's in those stairways.
And man, that was just like that was also a very stressful scene because even though it's obviously a very different situation. She's calling old contacts, but whoever job hunted before.
Yeah, what that was.
It feels to do that.
I originally thought that she was just looking for other jobs during her time here, but but it still gives off that idea of like
it's still the same idea, and like you can tell so many of those calls are dead ends. Where I think one of the guy, like she calls a guy and then he's hitting on her and asking if she's single, and then several other calls just lead to nothing.
Yeah, and one of them, like the guy picks up and she's like, "No, I'm not a secretary. I'm an attorney."
The song that play that's a good one. The song that plays in this scene is "I Did It My Way," but the Spanish version.
I realized that when I was listening.
Bradley once asked me if money was a lawyer's power level in this series, but I think
whether they speak Spanish is their power level.
Doing things their own way is the measure of success in this series. When she gets the deal with Davis and Maine, she does this little happy dance in the underground parking lot, and it's the cutest. Eventually, they meet with Mesa Verde. Howard is pleased, but not enough to get her out of the hot seat. He actually hits her with a scathing, "I'll give that to someone else. You got a lot on your plate in doc reviews." So
dude, that fucking killed me because like the early show, I was like, "Oh, fuck Howard." And then the past couple episodes have been like, you know what, Howard's a cool dude. I like this guy. And now I'm like, okay, not like fuck Howard, but
come on,
fuck Howard.
And I wanted to touch on that. I've always been trying to gauge everyone's opinions on these new characters. To this
I feel like this is a show where like how we feel about each character can flip flop more than once over the course of a show.
Definitely. And at this point, like Howard is being mean, but he's also not being wrong. Like he is the boss, and Kim was involved in this whole mess, and his name is dragged through the mud as a result as well. So we'll see how it goes. This actually segues into a little Chuck section of this episode, where you have a scene of Howard and Chuck where they're drinking to Mesa Verde's success, which I think is the scene directly after that last one we talked about.
Yes.
Howard admits that he's the one who's been punishing Kim here. So unbeknownst to Jimmy, it's not like a Chuck being petty thing. Chuck might be like steering Howard in that direction because that's just an added bonus, but this is a Howard thing, and Jimmy is misplacing his hatred.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that he did for a long time, actually. In Season 1, Jimmy misplaced his hatred towards Howard, not knowing that it was Chuck's fault that he never got the job at HHM and things never went his way. I do like how they drink together here, like proper work buddies.
Yeah.
It shows that the relationship isn't shallow.
There's something like almost sinister and weird about this like shot here, or like this whole scene.
It's probably because it's so dark, you know.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. Has to do with lights, but that's obviously intentional. I feel it's like, I don't know. It's almost like a communion with the devil or the monster kind of deal, where like they're like around this campfire and they're going over these documents, and it's just kind of like they're all alone. Something just feels like absurdly wrong in this like scene. I can't really put my finger on it, but it just feels very secretive and so on.
Is it maybe the idea that this is Chuck at work a little bit? Like, we've seen scenes where he goes to HHM and it's really menacing, even though he's wearing his stupid suit. But like, just the fact that Chuck is slowly getting back into the law, at first it was like inspirational and like, yeah, good for you, Chuck, but once you start realizing what that means for Jimmy, it kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, because by Chuck gaining power is actually putting Jimmy in a worse situation.
Yeah, that might be it, where it's like he's getting more and more involved. He's like taking on higher risk cases, it seems. So it's probably more of that. And it's like, I don't know, something about like Howard's like look here, thinking about probably Kim and everything, just seems, because it's because if you relate it to before Chuck kind of re-entered the scene, Howard probably would have just taken this case on by himself and probably would have brought Kim on to help him out. But now he's going to Chuck instead.
Yeah.
So it's a change of dynamic, you know.
Speaking of Chuck and going to work, he actually visits HHM later this episode. It's, I think, one of the final scenes. He's working there at night. Kim is still there because she never left. And you get this really, really interesting scene, a very important scene. And actually, since we've watched up to episode 7, we have a both sides situation here, which we might discuss later. But Chuck talks about Jimmy's past of stealing from their father. And his time working at the store, he stole $14,000 worth from his own father. And his father eventually went out of business, which drove him into sickness, which drove him into death. And Jimmy cried the most at the funeral, so says Chuck. And this is really important because there's a reason why Chuck distrusts Jimmy. He knows Jimmy from his childhood and up more than we did. Yeah. We know the Jimmy now more than Chuck might, but he knows the Jimmy from the past more than we do.
Yeah, I feel like if with Jimmy, if it was just the slipping and if it was just like, you know, getting hit by cars, I don't know if Chuck would have the same level of distrust as he does, but yeah. I think it's definitely has to do with their father a lot.
Now, let's compound this with the opening scene. We have Jimmy being more charming and likable to even Chuck's own wife. We have Jimmy leading their father to his death as far as Chuck is concerned. So you have this disdain and jealousy that have built from past times where this fuck up is charming my wife more than I can, and this monster stole from our own family. So you can kind of see why Chuck feels the way he does. And again, with Howard, this is a story that really likes to play every side.
Yeah.
And show you that everything has multiple sides to it, and these situations are quite complex and deep rooted. There is one Jimmy scene I think I skipped that I would bring up now.
You skipped the scene where he was in the courtroom with the Beanie Baby.
Yeah, well, he's bribing the lady who he's bribed before. We've seen with the little beanie baby to move up a case or whatever. Erin is there. She's berating him, and he meets with the prosecutor, who hits. He's like talking about Jimmy's new job at Davidson Man. He's like, "Oh man, that job seems sweet." And he's talking about his new house, and the prosecutor says, "I killed my mother for a fireplace." So it's all in all, it's like a comedic way to show just how much Jimmy is squandering here, because you have this prosecutor that would kill for this cushy job, and Jimmy just isn't having it. The remainder of the episode is a couple of Mike scenes as we build on to his storyline of the season. We talked about before how Stace was kind of being stressed about their location, and Mike finding ways to work hard to ease their situation. Right now, they're staying at a hotel. At the end of the episode, Hector Salamanca approaches Mike and asks him to take the blame for the gun. So this is a scene where Bradley and I will have more investment in immediately than Joe might, because this guy shows up at the end and Joe's like, "Who is this? What does this mean?"
It's Salamanca. He's drug man.
He is a drug man, but he is.
Any of the people in this family who show up, I'm like,
that's bad news.
We're about to get into some shit.
So this is especially vital for me and Bradley, because the way we know Hector Salamanca is a lot less threatening, we'll just say. The situation he's in Breaking Bad is less threatening, and seeing him at the height of his power right now just gives me very uncomfortable feelings, because that is a rotten old man there.
I know what this old man is capable of.
Indeed.
He shoot gun, bang, bang, shoot.
At I guess in a flashback in Breaking Bad where I don't know, he might have been this age. He was present for like one of the most heinous things I've ever seen someone do in a TV show.
Was it the pool scene or the tub scene? Yeah, man, that scene is fucked. I'd say this is well before this, but not too long ago.
Okay.
Speaking of, Joe, you should watch Breaking Bad. Just on the side, just throw it in there.
It's only the
Breaking Bad gives me a tummy ache.
A tummy ache.
You're more prepared for it. That wraps up 2-5, which leads us in. What you got, Joe?
This scene with Chuck at the end, I can't remember the exact context why Kim and them are talking about, but like coming from this scene, I got the sense of Chuck tells this story to almost discredit Jimmy towards Kim.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just thought it was interesting because it's like the lawyer workaround of like, I'm doing this, but I'm not really doing this kind of thing. That like if Kim were to like swear off Jimmy, he'd probably push Howard more to like get her off of the doc duty kind of stuff.
Well, at the end of the scene, he's like, "I'll see what I can do with Howard." So in a sense, Chuck saves Kim, even though she says, "I save me."
I think you say that, but I feel like more it's like he's doing this as a favor, and he's trying to push her, like he's still trying to push her away from Jimmy and trying to get her to like come around to his viewpoint.
Definitely. I think that's definitely there.
Yeah. Once again, I don't have a lot on this episode because it was literally the longest time ago since I saw this episode. But that's about it.
Yeah. So we got 2-6, Bali High.
Bali High.
Which is a song from an old movie which Jimmy sings at some point of this episode. Yeah. We're actually going to start with Mike's story here, where he comes home to a Salamanca. One of the family men is there, and he's mean mugging Mike. He's like, "What are you going to do about the gun?" And Mike lays a trap, which, classical Mike fashion, you ask yourself, what is he doing? He puts down this specific rug, and... were y'all able to guess what was going on? As that's the usual question with most Mike scenes.
Cool. I was just like, well, the family's gone. I guess they moved out, and I guess Mike's just gonna sit here because he can.
Yeah. Later on in the episode, Mike comes back from work, he's able to use that rug to check that people have been stepping inside.
I bet he learned that from Death Note.
Was that a Death Note thing?
He does the thing where he like sticks a piece of paper by the door, and if it's moved, he's like, "Oh, someone came in."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He also has the thing where if someone opens the drawer, the whole room catches on fire.
Yeah.
That's good. So he comes home, he handles the men, but notably, he once again does not kill. He overpowers them and shoos them away.
Because he's fucking Mike.
Which really, like, he has the skills and the stealth and the know-how of where to hit people to disable them. But this is really just more trouble than it's worth for him. I mean, killing them might be even more trouble because then you're getting in trouble with the cartel for killing men. And
Plus the cleanup.
Showing this amount of balls, as we know, pays off for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, at the end of the scene, we see him visibly shaken, and he has to compose himself. It's really rare to see Mike show fear, but
I don't know if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, he's just extremely composed.
I feel like the fear is more drawn out from the fact that, like, he was right about the fact they were going to come into the house, and they could have done something to his family rather than anything else.
Yeah, it's like it's not about him; it's about the family.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but also I think the fear is more this idea of, like, in my own home. Like, if they're in my own home, that means they can invade any aspect of my life, which includes family. Mm-hmm. And knowing how powerful the cartel is, yes. And which leads us to the next scene where Mike is playing in the pool with Kaylee, and he looks up and he sees the goddamn cousins in the distance. And they point like a finger gun at Kaylee, and it's the most menacing thing, except not for Joe, because Joe's like, who are these jabronis?
I was not prepared for these motherfuckers.
I thought they were stand users.
They might as well be. They are the most hardcore.
They look like fucking JoJo characters with their matching discolored outfits standing next to and looking.
They could be JoJo characters.
They do. They like. They are definitely JoJo characters who fight in a pair, and they're probably like in part 5.
This is Crash.
Kind of fun
talking head.
Yeah. So this is quite the intimidation factor, and if you've watched Breaking Bad, it's even more suffocating because the fact that these guys usually operate below the border. The fact that Hector called them up to handle this job for him means that he really wants to intimidate Mike, and Mike has already shown himself to be pretty tough, and he's like, okay, bring in the big guns immediately.
These guys do not give a fuck.
They do not. They probably killed 2 people just getting to the roof of that building.
Yeah, oh, dude, you're not even fucking around.
Not even fucking around. They are those cartel people that you hear horror stories of, where they decapitate. Yeah. Actually, they do decapitate people in Breaking Bad. So.
Oh yes.
There you go. So Mike shows up later. He's been staking out Hector's, so he knows where he operates, which is his Helado store, his ice cream shop, and he just kind of big dicks Hector. He shows up. He's like, just not having any of it. Hector is he's impressed. Like, Mike comes into this room with the cousins, with other Salamanca men, without a gun, and he walks out alive, which just says a lot about Mike.
It's like, you see these just, even Hector's like, the balls on this guy.
So he accepts the deal for the gun. Nacho confronts him later in the episode, and Mike actually gives half of his money to Nacho, which is important because it just goes to show Mike's code of honor. It's surprising even to Nacho, and he's like, I couldn't handle your problem all the way. It looks like because of this gun thing, Tuco will be out sooner rather than later. And yeah, that's just kind of who Mike is.
Yeah, it really is a code of honor thing because, like, I mean, it's not like he owed Nacho that money. It's not like Nacho was like, "Hey, give me 25,000." He was genuinely surprised Mike gave it to him.
Yeah, he takes it, of course, because I mean, you gotta do
Mike doing this because he's that kind of guy.
And that's why everyone loves Mike, even if he's a criminal. Like, he has this code of honor that's addicting to watch. Which leads us into Jimmy's storyline with no honor. Jimmy can't sleep because he can't even escape the Davis and Maine commercial because it's playing on TV. So he goes to sleep at the nail salon, which is interesting because he's got like this nice cozy house at Davison, Maine, and you get the sense of this growing sense of not feeling right there.
Yeah, I kind of felt I understand, like, because I went to camp for like 10 years or whatever, and when you go to camp and you work there and you stay there for like weeks on end, you you get comfort, you get this comfort from the bed that you sleep in, even though it's a shitty bed. And the fact that you get taken out of it sometimes, like, it feels very suddenly, just because, like, oh, summer's over, time to go home. It's just like I miss this shitty bed I used to sleep on every night because of what it meant to me.
On a deeper character level, though, Jimmy doesn't feel like he belongs or deserves Davison, Maine, and thus doesn't deserve the apartment they give him, and thus deserves his shitty nail salon, because that's where he thrives and that's where he should be right now.
I don't think even if it's I don't know if it's a deserve thing. I think it's more of like a comfort thing where, like, he goes so up against the grain of, like, Davison, Maine, like, controlling and his own personal freedom, that he'd rather be in this, like, nail salon apartment and be free than live in luxury but have to play by their rules.
Mm-hmm. It's his own little way of rebelling here early in this episode. We're gonna mix in Kim's storyline here, where she's in bad terms with Jimmy, but so she's waiting for Jimmy to call her in the morning as she's getting ready. And if you, from context clues, you pick up that he's been calling her every morning for a week, singing songs to charm her. Jimmy is just so lovable, man. He's such a fuck up, but, like, I think he's so charming. And he sings Bali High, which is where the titular song comes from.
Right.
You come back, and Kim is back at her office. She's meeting with Kevin and Paige. As this meeting is about to start with Kevin and Paige, Kim and Howard are walking out together, and Howard is still not happy with Kim, so he's, like, still stone-faced. He's kind of robotically moving. As soon as he turns this corner and sees Kevin and Paige, he turns on this charisma. And I think Patrick Fabian, the actor for Howard, has such a good flip of being the tight-ass, stone-faced lawyer to the charismatic businessman lawyer.
I was thinking that when I watched this scene, like, this guy knows how to, like, really, like, exert his charisma when he wants it to. Which can be a pretty hard talent to especially express on screen, because, like, when Howard is doing his thing and he's not being a total dick, he's a likable guy, and, like,
definitely.
And so it's just, you can definitely see that shift when he goes in and talks to them, and it's more of like just on the actor just being really good at what he does.
Later in this episode, we get this really good scene where Kim is fighting a losing case. She's doing Mesa Verde stuff. She is fighting with Schweikert and Coakley. This is still about the Sandpiper case, I believe.
Yes, it's they're trying to access something.
Yeah, and she's fighting the case. She's fighting her heart out. Rich Schweikert takes her out afterwards and tells her the story of his own trial by fire, which I think is a really good story and a really sympathetic story, where Rich also had a similar experience where he gets sent out to the wolves when he was starting out in his first big law firm, and he finds out later that the only reason why his superior didn't show up is because he had, like, an appointment that he didn't want to miss. And he laughs, but it hurt him to this day, and it never sat right with him. This is a really good pathos building moment for Rich, if he's being genuine here, because you get the sense that he empathizes with Kim in the plight that she's going through, to the point where he offers her a job.
Yeah.
Do you guys think it's a good idea for her to maybe pursue this job or not? Actually, we will talk a little bit more about it in episode 7, but when I first watched this, I was conflicted, because Kim does owe a lot to HHM because they paid for her tuition and all that, her law degree. But they're really not treating her well right now, and she's working her ass off.
I don't think they paid for her tuition, because the whole point was that she has her debt for the law degree, and the other company says they'll pay off the debt for her.
No. HHM paid it off.
No,
HHM is paying off the debt. That's how it works.
Yeah.
and he said Schweikert and Coakley would take over that burden. So Kim is getting increasingly fed up with her work, and as she's getting fed up, she cons a cheater and calls Jimmy while Aaron is babysitting him. Now Kim is slipping as an escape, just like how Jimmy might do, which is not a good scene. It's not a good vibe, Kim.
It's like, how's our main character influenced this?
I messaged, I think, Willer and Bradley, or maybe just been Willer. I'm like, oh, this poor dude is just getting scammed by Kim at the moment.
This poor dude's pretty scummy, so I don't feel too bad.
What makes him scummy?
Okay, so he walks in with a girl, and he's kissing her, and then he walks...
Oh, okay, I forgot about that part.
Yeah,
so I didn't see that
Kim
part.
sees him from the outside. He is kissing a woman. He walks in. He immediately buys Kim a drink. So that might have been his wife or even his mistress. And now he's like 2 layers down trying to get Kim.
Okay, fuck that guy.
And Kim is like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to vent. And so we link this back to, I think it was episode 1 of season 2, where she does her first con with Jimmy as Giselle and Victor with a K. And she seemed to enjoy it, but she got us to go back to her reality. But when she's slipping herself, when things are getting rough, she, like Jimmy, has found solace in conning people and asserting that sneaky dominance when life is kind of keeping her down. Look, man, Chuck is an asshole, but his warning to Kim from the last episode is looking pretty true when you watch this one, where...
I just think like this scene goes back to the whole kind of weird moral conflict and hypocrisy that Kim has.
Yes.
Where like she's scamming this person, but she feels morally right doing it because he's like a cheater and he's an asshole and all that kind of thing.
Definitely. That's how Kim can justify it. And who knows, maybe we can explore something like that later.
Who knows? I know.
But I don't know if that's the truth. So it ends up with Kim beating herself up over forcing Jimmy to take the Devious Main job, which he denies. But you get the sense that he's denying it more because he doesn't want Kim to feel bad.
Yeah.
At the end of the episode, Jimmy destroys his cup holder so his cup can fit, which I think is a wonderful imagery. That cup holder has been a good metaphor all these episodes, and now he's had it. He's officially broken the mold, and that leads us directly into one of my favorite episodes of this season, 2-7 Inflatable.
This one was a joy.
This one was really good. I really, really enjoyed it.
And this, out of these 3 episodes, the previous 2, obviously Jimmy was in them, but they had a lot more Kim and Mike in it.
There were more Kim and Mike episodes for sure.
Yeah, we're back to our boy.
Yeah, we're back to the titular. Well, Saul is nowhere to be seen, but Jimmy's out here doing work. So we're gonna actually start with Mike here. We have anytime Mike and Jimmy are doing stuff together, it's a joy. So here we have them taking the blame for the gun, and it's such bullshit. And the DA is like, "Are you serious right now?
Nobody buys it.
Are they paying you off?" And Mike and Jimmy are just like, "We're not gonna say anything." So
Jimmy's like, "Maybe a bird flew over and dropped the gun." I don't know. Who can say?
So Jimmy tries to be nice and make it a pro bono case. He's trying to show like an olive branch. He's like, well, you know what? You get the sense that like Mike dragging Jimmy into doing something a little more scummy is just like a nice, refreshing thing for Jimmy to do. Earlier this season, when Jimmy was getting harassed by Chuck in one of the joint meetings, Mike calls him with one of these stunts, and Jimmy goes. And this happens again now, where like Jimmy finds a way to kind of show some stress relief by doing these little slip-in actions. Onwards with the rest of the Mike storyline here. We have some Mike and Stace checking out the new house, which as I was rewatching this, it was at this point where like it really hit me that Mike is everything Walter White says he is, but Mike is actually doing it.
He's pretty much the shit.
So Walter
White is the danger.
He's well, not as dangerous as Mr. White, but
yeah.
that man's a problem.
He is dangerous.
The thing with Walter White in Breaking Bad is that he's always doing it for his family, but is he really? Mike's storyline
for his family.
We won't get too much into that because Joe will watch Breaking Bad one day, of course.
Family is everything.
La familia es todo.
Just not anybody else's family. Just
yes. So on Mike's front, we are literally seeing, like, whenever Stace and Kaylee have a problem, Mike will put himself in increasingly more serious situations to be able to address those problems. And you can tell that the jobs Mike has been taken from the vet have been increasing in danger, and now he's getting involved with the Salamanca. So This is a trajectory that is not looking good for our boy, but it is paying off because it is making his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter happy.
Yeah, because he got that $25,000. And then this super awesome house, he's able to tell her, he's like, don't worry about the cost. So
yeah.
Like, it's good.
Yeah, so it's like Mike's storyline is starting off this trajectory of Mike giving up more and more pieces of himself to provide for his family. But it's genuine this time. You can definitely tell that, like, this is why he does what he does. It is not an ego trip like some other bald-headed criminal men,
white men.
Yeah. So Mike still wants revenge on Hector. He's clearly not happy about this gun situation, to the point where he brushed off Jimmy's pro bono thing earlier in the episode. So he starts staking him out. Having a cave on Tuco situation is really driving him the wrong way, and we'll have to see where this leads him. I imagine it can't be anywhere good.
Never.
I wouldn't fuck with the Salamancas. Let's bring it back, though, to the Jimmy side. The first scene of the episode is a young Jimmy watching his dad get swindled out of his money due to his kind heart. The guy tells Jimmy not to be a sheep. So this is a very important scene. I know Joe really liked this scene.
This is one of my favorite scenes so far in the show.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Especially when paired with the Chuck scene from episode 5.
Yeah. It's so interesting because it's like, in a way Chuck was right, but in a way Chuck was also wrong.
Yes.
You know? He just didn't really understand what was happening, and like kind of what really influenced Jimmy to kind of look out for himself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, the thing about Jimmy's dad is he's
a sucker. That dude is too kind for his own good. And as a result, he can't provide for his family. And the truth is, Chuck was right. Jimmy was stealing from his father. But I don't think Chuck had any idea just how much money was being bled from the business just from the father being a sucker.
Yeah, because he was just about to give that dude free stuff.
He even chased him down at the end where he's like, I'll still get him this light. Jimmy, watch the store. And that's when Jimmy steals the first bit of money. Mm-hmm. That mentality of they're wolves and sheep. Jimmy seems so mad at his dad for getting tricked. Like, Jimmy could tell, even as a kid. So when that man says that straight up to him, this is where it all begins, really. Like, what a pivotal moment.
Yeah, it's like, what is that man unleashed on the world?
My favorite part was Jimmy's dad gives the guy $10, and the guy immediately goes back. He's like, I'll buy 2 cartons of cigarettes.
Like, yeah, he pulls out more money from his pocket than the dad gave him.
Which was, I think it was $8 for both packs or something like that.
Yeah, what the fuck? That's so cheap.
And I just think it's funny because it's like, you made a grand total of $2 on your scam here.
Well, at the end of this, you could tell at the end he's more like, I need to teach this kid a lesson because he has potential in this world and he's gonna need it. And can you even blame Jimmy at this point? Like, if your dad won't listen to you and
Jesus
he's
Christ.
going to run your family's business into the ground, then like what can you do?
I just realized how cigarettes he just got.
How much what?
Cigarettes, because he pulls out like two big cartons.
It's
of cigarettes.
cartons, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a whole carton.
I was like, Jesus. I thought I saw it more as like that guy just kind of cocky and really, I guess it maybe making a point to Jimmy, but
he was why he wasn't being cocky. Like I wholeheartedly believe that he saw that Jimmy needed those words that day.
Yeah, because I don't think he was just like, he is an asshole, but I don't think he was just being an asshole. Like he was able to see how ridiculous Jimmy's
situation was.
Dad is, and he's like, I think he was genuinely like, don't end up like this.
Because you can imagine at some point someone taught that man a lesson that in this world you have to step on others to rise.
Yeah, he was able to look at Jimmy. He's like, if this guy ends up like his old man, he's just going to get ground up.
Yeah. And maybe he respected Jimmy for seeing through it, too.
Yeah, like, I think he had a little bit of respect just because he kind of saw a little kindred spirit in Jimmy. He's like, this kid...
This kid fucks.
Bullshit, This kid fucks.
The thing is, like, it's the audacity of literally getting your money and then immediately spending it as soon as you get it.
Hey, man. Shows a point.
I think, like, it's just... I don't know. I thought it was funny. But... Yeah, but, like, it definitely, like, it's just to show that, I don't think it was just Jimmy that was going to run this business into the ground. And also
it was multiple factors. There again, two sides to this story,
and it kind of goes back to that recurring theme with Jimmy, that no good deed goes unpunished kind of thing, where Jimmy tries to get his dad to not like give him the money, like he tries to intervene, tries to like point out like this guy's scamming him. He gets scolded by his father. His father tries to do the good deed again, the spark plugs, and the guy scams him out of money. It's just kind of that domino effect of it.
Maybe we can even connect this to the switch in the beginning of the season, where flipping that switch had no negative effect. In this case, it's like Jimmy is like, my father is already running this to the ground. Me stealing this money is only going to marginally speed up the inevitable here. Maybe that's how he saw it, and that's
a really good connection. He's like, like taking this money here, like it's not.
What's the difference between me taking the money and someone else taking the money?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And these are the kind of lessons that have been instilled in Jimmy throughout like the course of the series, and you can see why he grows up and perpetuates this cycle of scumminess, because it pays off for him more than going at it straight ever does.
Mm-hmm.
Which takes us into modern Jimmy, where he's trying to quit from Davis and Maine. Omar tells him he can't. He can't keep the money if he does. Which Jimmy's immediately like, oh, that was a joke. Don't tell nobody. So as Jimmy's walking home, he watches a wacky waving inflatable tube man and comes up with a dastardly plan.
And I just like the way this montage is formatted.
This montage is so good.
It was a joy to watch.
Yeah, it is delightful. And this montage has a scene. Let's talk about colors, because we haven't yet, and that's such a big thing in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yeah, because I know at one point in the past, I think we've only really touched on it once, is, obviously Jimmy will sometimes pick suits to emulate other people.
Like the Hemling to go blue.
Yeah, if he's not specifically emulating someone, if he's just picking whatever suit, he feels like, whenever he's more himself, he kind of goes for the more colorful suits.
Yeah. So there's this recurring theme in this show that people have spotted, and we'll keep an eye out for it, that rainbows represent the future or a wacky dream, or like a dream out of sight. In this case, look at the reverence that Jimmy looks at his suits when he opens, like in that montage when he unzips like the little suit sleeve.
The suit bag,
Yeah, and he just looks at the future that lays out in front of him, all these colorful suits. And we take it back to, I think it was episode 4 of season 1, where he's suit shopping and he looks at like a bright orange or like a peach suit. And he's like, well, maybe one day. That day is quickly approaching.
Yeah, because like he looks at these rainbow suits that he's about to use for his scheme, and you can just imagine that he's picturing himself wearing these at this firm he wants to start with Kim.
Yeah. And so, this, man, there's so many good parts to this montage. There's the juicer. There's the fucking toilets, man. That gets me every time. A cliff, like the ravine is like short 2 feet of water. They're low flow toilets, Jimmy. Just flush.
Yeah.
It's delightful. We've mentioned the suits. Mm-hmm. It's very well edited, very funny. When I wrote like that description that Jimmy watches a wacky waveable inflating tube man and comes up with a dastardly plan, I was like, that is a very Better Call Saul sentence right there. That's not a thing that could exist in many other shows. Which leads to Cliff firing Jimmy. Jimmy genuinely didn't want it to be personal, but he had to do it. And there's a couple really good lines here. One, you never gave this a chance, from Cliff. And that's what hurts the most, right? He never gave this job a true chance.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, he tried to do things his way. And ever since then, he really he knew it wasn't the right fit. Because he was doing it for Kim. All along, like, when you really boil it down, this was a way that he would get to Kim. Because that's what he really cares about. Which is cute, but goddamn it. This gives me a lot of Taylor vibes, Bradley. Where she never gave that other team a chance in the later parts of Worm.
Yeah, it's just... I don't know.
It really frustrates me when that happens.
They finally get an opportunity, both of these characters, to do, everything
like, they dreamed of, right?
Everything they dreamed of. Like, they have the resources they have now. Like, there's nothing really standing in their way, but...
God, when I really get to it, like, the beginning Taylor and the beginning Jimmy, in the very beginning of their stories, they have this ideal goal that they would like to reach, and then life takes them in different ways. And now we've reached the point where both of them have it all, and they squander it without ever giving it a chance.
Like Jimmy, we see him at the beginning. He wants a career as a lawyer. He wants to stop doing these stupid public defense cases. Yeah. He doesn't want to live in the back of a fucking nail salon.
And he has it all now, but...
Now he's a fully fledged lawyer, and then, the other fucking story. I want to be a superhero. Then she's a superhero, and she's like, fuck this.
The episode ends. We'll talk about Kim's storyline after this, but the episode actually ends with Omar helping Jimmy move, which Omar is such a bro. That's why in the fan base we call him Bromar. What a sweet guy.
Bromar.
And then he's like, "Sorry, man, I gotta go back to my kids." And you're like, "Oh, Omar,
I like him.
Kids."
Who wouldn't want to have kids with that man?
When and that he's now the second bro of the show because we have also Ernesto, aka Ernest Bro.
I thought Bronesto would be a better name.
Ooh, that's good too, Joe. That's why we need you in this fan base. You got the wild ideas. When Jimmy gets inside, he records a new message. He first starts by doing "This is the offices of Jimmy McGill," like in the Irish voice that he does or whatever it is.
I was so proud of him at the end of this scene.
But then he goes back on it and he just does a realistic, "This is who I am," and despite it all, this show has this theme of embracing who you are, of being the wolf and not being the sheep.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting spin on that because a lot of times, there are a lot of times that Jimmy being who he is leads to him doing, the more scummy side of these practices. But here, being who he is, doing the right thing for once.
Yeah.
He's just like saying, hey, I'm Jimmy. This is my office.
This is who I am. Yeah. It's great. So it's the road of truly embracing himself, and we'll see where this road leads. On Kim's side, Kim is stressing out over the exact wording of her quitting email, which is brilliantly in character. That was such a relatable moment.
Yeah, and it's such a fun contrast to how Jimmy was trying to quit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfectly paralleled where Kim is doing it to the letter, to the punctuation, while Jimmy is waving his arms like a
Jimmy's
jackass.
like, I'm gonna take a shit and I'm not gonna flush.
Yeah, I forgot Cliff says like, uh, Jimmy's like, it wasn't personal. I always liked you, Cliff. And he's like,
you're an asshole.
Full disclosure, Jimmy, I think you're an asshole.
And that hurt me because I was like, oh, come on.
But he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Jimmy didn't have to do all that stuff. I mean, like, he was trying to get his severance pay, but...
Yeah.
I mean, but still, that's kind of an asshole move.
That's like all these people had to work with you these past few weeks.
That's like a textbook asshole move. Is to come in.
Omar is like, really, man? I wasn't aware you were unhappy. Like, Omar really thought Jimmy got everything he wanted. Which he did.
Omar worked so hard for Jimmy.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. But you know what? It leads to him being himself, so it's like, what? So you get this, the show is conditioning you that for Jimmy to be himself, your heart must break. And I don't know, maybe he'll turn around.
So what I think is really funny about this whole sequence with Jimmy is that if this was like a regular like sitcom-y like comedy show, like the whole moral of the story would have had like the boss kind of like ease off of Jimmy or turn around to his ways and kind of like it's the whole arc of the show basically about changing the office and getting out this kind of like suit and tie fashion or like this like black dress and becoming more colorful and expressing who you are. But then this has the harsh reality of like, no, people are just kind of, they do want to do things by like the standard and you're not gonna be able to push them.
You're gonna burn bridges, and he most definitely did. So Jimmy tells Kim that he quit, and Jimmy wants to open up Wexler McGill. He admits.
And at this point, I was like,
"Girl,"
it's like he's kind of tried to do this before, and I was like, "Oh, come on, man, come on."
So Bradley, you're in the camp that you hope it works out with Wexler McGill.
Because here's the thing, not thinking too hard about, the implications of this, what could go wrong down the line. I'm like, yeah, I want this for them.
Yeah.
It does work out. But Kim's kind of bringing up a lot of valiant points.
Unfortunately, I'm a big Kim-Jimmy shipper, all right? I mean, I'll admit it. Their relationship is cute as fuck. So you're with them. You're with them. But when Kim is like, I don't know, Jimmy, you're like, you know what? I'm with you, Kim.
But
we'll get to where that goes.
Like whenever she accepts, but she wants to split the names, I'm like,
it's perfect. But it's also heartbreaking. So this is everything Jimmy could ever dream of if it happens. Being himself and having Kim as his partner, it's literally his ultimate goal as a character. Like, this is where the character of Jimmy McGill, like, the story would end if he got it, pretty much. Or it's like stuff would have to happen after the fact. That would.
It's like I feel like we're kind of reaching an emotional peak where these characters are kind of getting what they want. So since the season's about to end, something terrible is about to happen. I just know it.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. And Jimmy admits to Kim that he needs to be himself for this to work. And I think that's really important, the self-awareness where he's like, there's no point in me quitting if I don't get to be myself when I'm with you. And Kim is pretty accepting of this fact. She lets it stew over. She doesn't immediately reject him. She doesn't immediately accept.
Yeah, because, the reason, Jimmy floundered for a very long time in the back of that nail salon trying to, do all this public defense shit. But, whenever he started, actually putting himself out there and going for his own ideas, then he started getting more successful. And, Kim might have rejected this before, but she kind of did a little bit of her own slipping on that guy in the bar. And, with Jimmy previously before that. And, she's gotten to see that, she hasn't really been able to be herself at this firm. Yeah. So she's like, you know what? I got to try it Jimmy's way.
Yeah. I feel like a big theme, and it's definitely brought up again, and it's shown, like, the whole, like, being yourself kind of thing. I had something about this many moons ago, but I cannot remember what it was.
No, I want to hear.
It was something along the lines of like for a while it seems that they are trying to also try out the other person's way of doing things, but Jimmy is the one that really can't conform and fit.
Yeah, I could see that where Kim is trying to slip a little and Jimmy's trying to straight lace a little.
Because Kim like goes and does that scam on the guy and everything, and at the same time, this is still around the time where he's still trying to like fit himself into this like Davison, Maine kind of stuff. Like he's having that struggle with like staying up all night, and like I feel like that's also why we don't see much of Jimmy, because in the background he's trying to like fit in. It's probably not that hard, like in the grand scheme of things, but he's trying to go more straight. So there's not a lot of like Jimmy-ness going on.
Yeah,
but it's like
no Jimmys.
Yeah, no Jimmy's allowed. But it's so hard for him to change that he can't. But for Kim, she's able to adapt to it a lot easier and is more open to like changing her ways a little bit. And that can either be seen as Jimmy corrupting Kim or Kim being more flexible towards the future and like being more liquid in what she wants to do.
We lead to Kim at the Schweikert interview, which I think is a very good scene for multiple reasons. We get to learn that Kim is from the Midwest. Now, if we recall, Gene, future Saul / Jimmy, is in Nebraska, which is also in the Midwest. So maybe there's something there. Who knows? I'm theorizing here too. I'm trying to connect some dots of my own. And she tells, this is the first time Kim has ever talked about her past in an explicit way, and it's very short, but it's really important. She looked at her life and looked at what was going on around her and decided she wanted more and became a lawyer. And when they ask exactly what she wanted, she specifically says, more. I wanted more. And Kim is someone who is even more mysterious than Jimmy. She really doesn't like to talk about herself. She never will monologue about her past. Like, this is the only time, and she barely says anything. And it's an interview.
I feel like this is the first time we've kind of got some like personal background.
And she's very comfortable when she's with Jimmy from all the scenes we've seen. So Jimmy's not the kind of person to pester her about the past. Because Jimmy doesn't want to think about the past either. He wouldn't want for her to pester her about her past. So there's barely anyone in the story to let us dig into the fortress that is Kim Wexler, which is very interesting because you've made this character that at this point everyone loves, but you step back and you realize, wait, we don't really know your deepest desires or like what's really going on in your subconscious. We know what's going on with Jimmy because Jimmy has confrontations with Chuck and Kim and everyone else in his life, and you can kind of get what's going on with him through there. Kim is very much reserved, and I think that's really interesting. So I'll have to point out nuggets of information and mindsets that we get from her.
Yeah, so, we'll get our nugs.
Hot prediction.
Ooh, hit me.
Like here, like if, what if Kim was Chuck?
What? Pardon?
So like
Kim was Chuck.
Like Chuck left Cicero to go be a lawyer, big time lawyer, and he pretty much left and forgot Jimmy. Like he wanted to separate himself from it, and then after Jimmy got into major trouble, went back and got Jimmy and brought him back. So like, what if that's almost the same thing happening to Kim, where Kim is like, she wants to like separate herself from this past life experience with like her family and what they did, and wants to be more straight-laced and towards the law.
I think we should definitely hold on to that, man. That there's some season 5 stuff that you might wanna watch one day.
Because like season 5 is like currently releasing. Like a new episode just came out this week, right?
A new episode came out this morning. I watched it this morning, and there was a scene in it at the end where my mouth was agape, which is the same state that the last episode left me in. And apparently next episode is supposed to be the good one, so I don't know how they could get better, but regardless.
So they come out in the morning? That seems weird.
No, they come out at night, but I buy them on Amazon so I can watch it in the morning.
Oh, okay. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, it's great. I wake up early for it. Yeah, hold on to that thought. Very cool. This scene though, she calls Rich Howard.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was so awkward.
Not only is this cringy and awkward, but think about what this means. And think about what Jimmy was saying to her earlier in the episode. She's like, "Why are you going to Sharkey and Coakley? That's just like the grass is not greener on the other side. That's going to come with its own baggage. It's going to come with its own problems. You should be your own boss with me." And he's right. And she realizes he's right here because she just calls him Howard, and it's like, you're just another Howard. There will be a situation in which you might be overbearing.
Thing where, like, if you think about it, she could just keep on hopping from like place to place, trying to like get a better position at a different, like, each different place just gives her a better and better like offer. But like, if she was okay with like the money she was making, she would have just stayed at Hamlin and Maine and not worried about it. But like, it's a bigger deal, the fact that she wants freedom and like she wants to express herself. She wants to like, she doesn't want to be where she makes a mistake, she's suddenly under someone else's boot heel.
Exactly. Like what happened earlier this season.
Yeah.
So, as a result, Kim goes up to the roof and she's having a smoke and having a think. Mm-hmm. And she comes up with a third option. Wexler / McGill. And she proposes this plan to Jimmy. So they would be two lawyers in the same office working together, splitting the costs, but two separate practices. So Jimmy gets to be himself. Anything that happens to Jimmy does not reflect on Kim. And I think this is a great compromise on Kim's side. But when you look at the end, the way Jimmy's looking at those cards that are split in half,
you could tell that he's heartbroken.
You can tell that he is not very excited about this, to say the least.
It's like, this is a terribly like huge leap in terms of metaphors and analogies, but it's like saying you'll get married to someone, but they have to sign a prenup. Like, it's the idea of like we're technically together and we live under the same roof, but God forbid if something were to happen, I can walk out of this no sweat.
Yeah, you know? Like I'm willing to do this thing, but I'm not willing to go down with you. You know?
Yeah, I'm not there to bear your burdens.
And what does that imply? That she knows Jimmy is prone to fucking up. Yeah. But at the same time, she likes and loves him enough to be willing to go with it in her own way. Where it's like, I'm not gonna say no to you, Jimmy. I still want you. I still need you in my life. But I'm going to have this layer of protection. I'm going to have this, perhaps this space blanket from your radiation. I don't know, weird metaphor.
Safety pillows between everybody.
Yeah. Oh, I noted when Chuck is talking about Jimmy to Kim, you can hear his space blanket under his suit, which, as Joe has said, the space blanket represents a layer of separation from Jimmy. So in that scene where he's bad-mouthing Jimmy, underneath the surface is a space blanket that you can't see because it's not obvious that he's doing it to like make a rift between Jimmy and Kim, but you can hear it through the space blanket sounds.
Yeah.
Ooh. That wraps up our coverage of these 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think you said going into episode 7 that it's one of your favorite in the season, and out of these 3, I mean the proof's in the pudding. We talked about it for I think a lot longer than the other 2. I really liked episode 7.
Episode 7 is very good.
I feel like 5 and 6 were very much more like setting stones up for other things.
Yeah, every season of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul has the episodes that have good scenes, but they have a lot of different scenes that are setting the seeds. So you'll have these episodes where every character is present, and we're just setting stuff up, but they're really important.
Yeah, like Rebecca, basically, you could like write a sentence or 2 for what happened to each character and call it a day.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we went through Rebecca pretty quick as a result.
Yeah. But Flaybill had a lot more depth and like kind of character growth and situation building and kind of revelations for each of the characters.
I want to talk a little bit about the future. Do y'all have any predictions, first of all, of where these stories might go in these last?
So Kim leaves Hamlin and McGill, and then I don't know. Like they just go off and they.
That's fine. You won't predict it.
Yeah.
I
So,
promise.
I doubt I'll predict it correctly, but just for the future, when Kim was initially offered this deal at, how do you pronounce it,
Schweiker and Coakley.
Yeah, so when she was initially offered the job, Mr. Man was super nice. The interview went really well, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I was like, I at first I was like, she's probably gonna start working here, but then this guy who seems super nice will probably end up being an asshole. And after the interview, once we get her accidentally calling him Howard, I'm kind of more in on that now, because kind of like what you guys said, you worded it really well, where that happened because this guy might just be another Howard to her.
And being another Howard is an important distinction, because being a Howard does not mean you're a bad guy. It means that you're a complex boss that has to deal with these characters that have bullshit going on. So you're forced to make the tough decisions, right?
Yeah, it's also the relationship thing.
Yeah.
It's Kim isn't becoming a partner, and she's still gonna be working under him.
Yeah.
So it's still the idea of I'm working under.
She's on partner track at least.
Yeah. Because it's like, if this guy was just an asshole, which, I mean, he's been super nice, but if he was just an asshole, I don't think that would be a problem. It's specifically because he might be another Howard, because she's probably dealt with a ton of assholes, but Howard
is different.
He was like the big contributing factor as to why she left.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, let's think of how many characters in this show. This show has. We're gonna talk about it in the future, because when you really look back, you'll be like, man, my God, there's so many good side characters in this show. How many characters in this show, even with small dialogue, are really flat and one-dimensional? Like the Salamancas are the only pure evil people that we know.
The JoJo stand users.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone else is pretty complex. So we're seeing the nice side of Rich, but we've also seen the mean side of Rich. When we first met Rich, he was calling Jimmy in the dumpster and strong-arming him with the sandpiper case, as you'll recall. Mm-hmm. That's when we first got introduced to him. So everyone's got multiple sides, but...
Yeah, it's like whenever we first met him, I was like, oh, he's the scummy lawyer fighting Jimmy on this sandpiper deal. I was like, fuck that guy. He's just covering for these people, scamming these old people. But now I'm like, oh, he's a pretty nice dude.
Just doing his job. I just want to say that we've now reached the point. I was very excited to get to these last 3 episodes for a particular reason. So when I first watched this show, there was 2 phases to it, maybe 3. The first phase is I watched the first 3 episodes and I didn't like the show.
Okay.
So I didn't watch the rest.
Interesting.
2 or season 1?
Season 1.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Because it was so different from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it is very different.
I wasn't ready for it. I went back and then I watched it through and I finished season 1. I was like, okay, I was a little harsh on this. I'm actually kind of really liking it now.
And then you went through season 2.
But it was when I got specifically to these last 3 episodes that I was like, unbeknownst to me, I was like, why am I so invested in every plot line right now? And it was at that point where I was like, wait, I think I love this show. And it painted the way that on rewatches I view season 1 and 2 now, where at first I didn't like him once upon a time, and now I love him. So I'm really excited that we got here. I will then say that season 3 is where everyone unanimously is like, oh, season 3 shits on season 1 and 2. And then season 4 is the season where it's like, wait, this isn't just an amazing show. This is now my favorite show. And then season 5 is happening. I'm like, how are they beating season 4 right now? So I'm glad that it's all very rapidly uphill from here.
Yeah, and talking about how kind of once you got to this point and beyond, how it recolored, season 1, those first few episodes. I can kind of tell already that this show probably benefits more from a rewatch than, say, Breaking Bad.
Definitely, because there's a lot of layers, and you have to get used to the storytelling. That's part of it too.
Like Breaking Bad,
it just fucking goes.
Like it fucking goes, and for the most part, for most characters, you kind of get what their deal is when you meet them.
The one difference is like Skylar. Skylar benefits a huge bunch from a rewatch.
Yeah. This show though, I feel like virtually every character, my opinion of them has flipped at least once.
Yeah. Oh, they'll flip more. Oh, there will be more flipping. All right. Thanks for joining us in Journey with Jimmy. Next time we will cover the remainder of season 2, and then after that we actually will watch the first 5 episodes of season 3, because there's just no good cutting point in season 3. You kind of have to do those 5 at once.
Which hopefully this next one will come sooner for 2 reasons: 1, quarantine, and 2, I did my first 70 hours of Animal Crossing, so maybe I'm slightly more burnt out.
Maybe.
So I'll actually do other stuff.
We'll see. All right. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.